to get rid of. All right, we got lots of people.
They're coming in nicely. We got give them a couple minutes, maybe, Matt.
Yeah. Project Insulin, huh?
Oh, sorry. This is Steven. I gotta switch that out. My apologies.
That's okay. Just curious, that's all.
Roger, your background is out of this world.
Yeah. Roger's really there. That's the thing you don't know. He's, you're on mute, Roger.
Not only have I left the country, I've left the earth.
Great.
I've been run out of town, literally.
We've often said Roger is, often seems like he's a space cadet in an orbit.
There you go.
Who's it?
I was going to say, don't say those things in front of the director, but I don't care anymore. I only have 14 days.
Yeah, well, even though there is a director sitting here, I will say I am not happy about that. And I'm not very happy about who they picked. But okay, that's a battle for another day, perhaps.
For what it's worth, I know Cinnamon and Jennifer, and we've already been doing some coordination. They've gotten all the files, and I think they're set up pretty well. We want to set them up for success. So
they're gonna take over. Yeah, so they got the files. They've got all of your stuff. They'll make them accessible somewhere or another.
Well, yeah, they'll figure out that they've got links to the whole Dropboxes, and okay. I think they can download those into a new Dropbox and send you all. Okay. But I'll leave everything up. I've put stuff up from today's meeting already. So.
Yeah, no, that's kind of, we don't want to lose all of that for sure, especially with a bunch of new people coming on in next month. It would be nice if they could access some of the old meeting information and get themselves up to speed.
Well, Matt, I don't know that we'll pick up many more people.
Yep.
If you want to give it a go, I do want to say that Chairman Vince Busick agreed to join us. I had asked him if he might sit in just to listen to the discussion about what people heard during their one-on-one meetings with board members. So I don't expect Vince will stay the whole meeting, but I had asked him to stay the first 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much, Vince. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Joanna and I met with Vince, and we don't remember that much what we talked about. That was a long time ago. So hopefully Vince remembers.
I remember everything.
It's a great meeting, and he was absolutely delightful and really knowledgeable. But we kind of talked about this and that, as I'm sure most of you did. That's kind of the one main thing on the agenda is for those of you who did get a chance to meet with one or more board members to give us just a brief, it's very informal, but brief report about what you talked about or, what your thoughts were. And then we'll see where that maybe leads us. I've got a couple of other ideas. So anybody like to start? I have no idea who met with whom, honestly. Hopefully the meetings went off. Anybody want to get the ball rolling?
It's not all.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. I met with both Kate Williams and Bob Broom. And I know Travis was at the Bob Broom meeting, so feel free to chime in. obviously, Kate's a huge supporter of ours, and she's very positive. We talked about a whole range of stuff, and I think she'd love to work with us to try and figure out better ways to use the CAC going forward. One thing in particular I remember talking to her about, and Roger was there too, so feel free to chime in, because like with you, Matt, it seems like it was a long time ago that we had lunch. But one thing she and I are both on the Reimagine project, and I think we both felt like not being able to meet in person because the RTD board won't meet in person, and there seems to be a policy that nobody else can meet in person while the board's not meeting in person. But I think we had a great meeting in person, and I'd encourage us to do that again. But I think also Reimagine is losing something by not meeting in person. I think it's becoming, frankly, way too staff driven, and I think Kate agreed with that assessment. The meeting with Bob I thought was really interesting because he's so focused on kind of the world of public finance, where, he came out of city government in Aurora, but he also has a public finance background, and he seems very focused and interested in finding alternatives to the sales tax as a way to supplement funding for RTD, and even talking about some kind of, like, setting up some kind of special assessment or property tax. I gathered from him, Travis, you may recall better, but he said that in the enabling legislation for RTD, there's the ability to do a property tax assessment of some kind. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting and well worth finding out more about with our group.
Interesting. I knew Bob to some extent when he was on the city council. We saw each other now and again.
Travis, do you have anything else to add since you were there?
I think Ben captured a lot of the discussion with Bob pretty well. He was, I think, really interested. RTD's sort of long-term plan right now is very stagnant because they, have discussed all the financial issues they have, but there hasn't been really a lot of structured discussion of how do they fix that. It's just sort of being taken as like, this is what it is. And so it was really interesting. He had done a lot of research of both what is RTD actually allowed to do today, and there are some avenues they could actually potentially act on without voter approval to get extra financing. And then also, what would it look like to try to obtain extra sort of tax financing, whether it's through RTD or looking at a model where it's a little bit more locally driven for parts of the transit system, and encouraging cities or counties to sort of go out and, start collecting their own in tax revenue that can go toward transit as well. So I guess while I'm here, the other person I spoke with was Troy Whitmore. We had a interesting discussion. It was really different than Bob's perspective. A lot of the discussion was focused on sort of things like Reimagine, but how at this point, a lot of community stakeholders are not really getting involved with it. So he lives up in the Brighton area, was giving the discussion of like Brighton as a city really feels that when the N line got launched, that the bus system in the sort of northeast part of the Denver metro area got destroyed because everything got changed to funnel into the N line, which is a pretty infrequent train line right now. And in the case of, in case of Brighton, a lot of concern that we'll Reimagine that some of those more like outskirting areas that are part of the RTD district, there's not really a very clear plan of how do they still get value out of the district. And I think we've heard similar discussions from Parker and some other places, as a committee. But that was really interesting, I think, as well of, right now RTD serves this huge area. And as part of that, there are some smaller cities that are isolated from the district at some level, like they're technically part of it, but the service they get is doesn't necessarily match up with maybe what their expectations are just because of where they're located versus the rest of the communities.
Did Bob or Troy say anything about the role of the CAC?
I would say Troy, we had a little bit of discussion on it. I think he thinks it's really valuable, but is a little bit unclear on sort of like what its mandate is in this sense. And like there was some discussion that, whether we had previously talked with our in-person meeting, what we thought our role would be, but it sort of seemed from his perspective that probably that's not very well defined for most of the RTD board, and they each have sort of their own perspectives, but he didn't feel like there's a really clear path forward of like what are the things we should versus should not be involved with right now, if that makes sense. And Ben can maybe talk on Bob, but I don't actually recall a lot of.
No, I think it was, I was going to say, I think it's very similar with Bob. The conversation was just so focused on kind of public finance stuff. And I don't think he sees a role for the CAC and in that arena. And so we didn't really talk that much about the CAC, except, Travis and I pitched the fact that we've got a lot of really smart, experienced people and we ought to be able to help and all. And he agreed, but he doesn't have any specific comments or thoughts about it.
It's interesting. I just might ask a question. Like, do you recall what funding mechanisms did you think were available to RTD that did not require voter approval?
Yeah, I know Travis said that. I'm not sure we really. Maybe you can recall what he was talking about specifically, Travis. But the other thing he said that took me by surprise is that he was chairing some special board committee on financing alternatives, and that was sort of the first I'd heard of that. And Vince, is that the case? Is there like a series of meetings set up to go into these alternatives?
Yes, I appointed an ad hoc committee to study Tabor impacts and potential debrucing, as well as considering other alternatives to raise revenue other than the sales and use tax. And there is some language in the enabling legislation of RTD that would indicate our ability to impact property taxes without voter approval. It's already been approved in the legislation. We haven't had a firm study on that. The ad hoc committee is looking at that as well. And of course, there may be some response to that from the public that might not be welcomed. So
I think there'd be a great business opportunity for me to run recall campaigns to try to keep you all from being recalled, right?
Yeah.
That's rough.
But that's just one of many things we're trying to see. And obviously, from my perspective, it would be great if the state legislature would decide to help fund RTD, like just about every other transit agency in the country gets funding.
So RTD apparently loses the Tabor exclusion in like 2024 or something like that, which would be kind of a disaster if it really went away.
Yeah, so I think it's 2025. We're thinking about an election in 2024. If we need to do an election, the other alternative may be refinancing those bonds that are currently excluded to give us a couple more years to figure things out. But yeah, it's huge impact. It's like $500 million hit. So yeah, it wouldn't be good.
Yeah, I didn't honestly know RTD's Tabor exclusion sunsetted in most cities, certainly in Boulder. As far as I know, it's just permanent. But you guys must have thought the voters maybe wouldn't go for that. So there was a time limit. I mean, I don't remember when that vote was held. It was some time ago. Yeah, okay. Well, that would certainly be a big money hit if that went away. All right. Other reports?
Here's the who we have met with. Maybe Ryan or Matt, do you want to talk about the Bobby Michelle meeting?
Yeah. I thought it was a really interesting meeting. He's representing the district where I live and do a lot of my work. So I was personally really impressed and excited. Just felt like he had a very grounded but open-minded perspectives. I thought we had a good conversation on a lot of things. He certainly understands the link between RTD's success and transit-oriented development. He's pretty well-versed in land use planning, which I just think is a really helpful baseline. He seems like pretty passionate and like ready to dig in. And certainly I just feel like it's like a little bit of a different demographic. He's a little bit younger than a lot of directors. So I think that's a good perspective to have. I don't know, Matt, what do you think as well?
And that's a good recap. I really enjoyed our conversation with Bobby. We did talk about transit-oriented development, or TOD, quite a bit, and maybe rethinking RTD's or some of RTD's strategy around like the light rail park and rides on the outskirts of Denver, and thinking about strategies to promote more development, particularly affordable housing at those sites, which Bobby seemed on board with, to try to put more transit riders right on top of the stations. So yeah, I thought there was some opportunity there. Kind of fits with some of the things the city's exploring, the state's exploring on land use and transportation, particularly in the context of the greenhouse gas roadmap. I've seen a couple of presentations recently from CDOT and the Energy Office at the state, and they have a list of like near-term actions in the greenhouse gas roadmap. They've pretty much, there's 9 of them, and they've really explored 7 of the 9. The only 2 left they haven't are expanding transit funding, and number 2, doing something about land use. And so I think we should frankly push the Pulse administration and the state legislature to do those 2 things in the next year, to implement their own greenhouse gas roadmap, since we're falling way behind on things like electric vehicle adoption.
Did you talk any about the CAC and its role?
Oh, sorry. Straying there a bit. A little bit. And yeah, Bobby wanted to learn more about us, had an interest in attending. As far as our role, I don't know if he had specific recommendations. Anything
That's
up
kind
for
of
you,
what I
Ryan?
recall. And I feel like he also has just been really kind of drinking from the fire hose of just being pretty new to the board in general. I mean, he sounds like he did a lot of his homework before being elected and tuning in as much as he reasonably could. But there's just so many different balls in the air to try to kind of figure out there. But he certainly definitely seemed very open to any resources that he could get. You know, something else we talked a lot about was I think it's the August planned free rides kind of program, and just how to market that, how to brand it, how to maximize its effectiveness. And he seemed to be very much understanding of all of that, and had a lot of, just seemed like he was like very pragmatic in how he thought about thinking through those things. He's just like fully aware of the implications of whether it goes well or not, and the opportunity that kind of comes with that.
Vince, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned electrification, and just a quick update there. I've been pushing pretty hard on this since I became the chair. Last week, I finally had our staff do a comprehensive study session for us on no and low emission vehicles, is how they phrase it, and electrification. As you may know, we have on order 17 electric buses that will not be on the 16th Street Mall, but will be integrated into the system. They are scheduled for delivery the first quarter of 2023, but that supply chain issues may make that an issue. Also, this board meeting in June, I will be announcing the formation of another ad hoc committee to study policy related to the acquisition and integration of electric vehicles into our system. So I'll have another ad hoc committee that will look at that. One of the problems is there's no national policy among transit agencies about what we should be doing, what types of systems we should be doing. There's a million different charging systems out there. It's kind of like electric cars when they were first coming online. You've got everybody now has kind of congealed around one type of charging system, except Tesla. They've got their own kind of thing. But but the same is kind of happening in the electric bus world, is that there are a lot of different charging systems and so forth. So one of the problems with that is the more you have these diverse systems that are out there, it's hard to get manufacturers to offer these products at a reasonable price. Once people come on board and everybody's kind of offering the same system, there'll be more competition and we'll be able to buy these buses for less than $1.2 million a piece. So, but we're working on that and appointing another ad hoc committee to really take a look at that policy. APTA, our national group, the American Public Transportation Association, has an electric vehicle committee that this ad hoc committee will be getting involved with to really see what's going on across the country. That's all I had. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Who else has a report? Oh, Matt?
Well, Vince, it's great to hear that RTD is looking further into electric transit buses. I know at one point we had the largest electric transit fleet in the country, but of course we haven't ordered a new one in like 6 years. Just my comment earlier about falling behind on EV adoption, I just want to clarify, I was referencing like light duty EV adoption, so passenger cars, where we have about 55,000 on the road today, but need to get to 1 million by 2030. And we're really falling behind on like the necessary adoption rates to get there. We only sell about 180,000 cars a year, and 12% of those are EVs right now. So, and we're really, I've been over reliant on that as a climate strategy to hit our greenhouse gas reduction target. So I think there's a lot of thinking now and sort of readjusting our expectations around transportation climate strategies and realizing that we need to reduce more VMT than we thought we needed to with strategies like transit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Transit is the green solution to the greenhouse gas problem. And we could just convince this administration that RTD is not evil, but we might get somewhere. So.
Okay, another report from somebody?
Yeah.
Matt, this is Andrea Suhaka.
Huh?
I met with Doug Tisdale, and then I met with Mr. Blumenthal yesterday. Doug Tisdale was a couple weeks ago. Roger was with Doug, but Mr. Blumenthal and I were all by our lonesomes and really had a great time, actually. I think Doug talked more about the CAC than Blumenthal, but Doug seemed to be saying that the RTD staff has too much control, that not much can happen unless they agree. And that's frustrating for a number of committees, not just us. So, but Doug did seem to say that Doug's one of my directors, that's why, and I know him, so that's why I call him Doug. He's very, very into transit, very much so, as he even takes a huge part in APTA, the National Committee on Public Transit Committee, Authority. What's the A stand for? Association.
Yep.
And he just said there's so many problems that we have got to figure out, but we didn't actually discuss solutions. Roger, that I can remember, I didn't hear much about solutions, just that it needs a lot of talk and things do need to happen.
You all know Doug. Doug talked mostly and we listened.
Yeah, we actually couldn't turn off the conversation, but had a good time with him, had a good time with Blumenthal. And he's also very, very much into transit. He said he was drinking from the fire hose because he was just elected. And he wants this to work. He really wants RTD to come back. I mean, to really come back. And to him, that's kind of frustrating that it hasn't, that more hasn't happened. And I don't think we actually talked about the CAC in general. We just talked about RTD and then what commonalities we had. They were both a lot of fun, but I don't know that we accomplished anything. I really enjoyed the discussions.
I think that relationship building, though, is important. I do think we heard some common themes. We talked about Eric Davidson, Paul Rosenthal, Bobby Deschelle. I mean, all of them have been all those board members that came on 2 years ago have been meeting virtually also. They've had very few opportunities to meet in person themselves, much less have any interaction with the CAC. So if you think about how hard it would be to come up, be elected to the board, trying to come up to speed and not have the ability to interact directly with staff and your colleagues makes that learning curve even that steeper. So I do think all of them, certainly the newbies, really appreciated. I've gotten feedback, really appreciated the opportunity just to sit face to face and talk to CAC members.
Because that's the only face to face those folks get.
That's right. Let's see, we had Joe. Do you want to report on anything with Shelley and Travis on your meeting with Troy? Jim, anything from Eric Davidson's meeting you think, or Matt, worthy of bringing up before we lose Vince?
Roger, this is Joe. I can step in for a quick report with Shelley.
Great.
Of course, Shelley's an old hand at transit. She's been around a long time and knows transit backwards and forwards. And we basically talked about a few things. One of them was the kind of push and pull between about how do you, what service coming back ought to look like, how to get it up. And one of the problems that both the north end of the district and the south end of the district have is no service. So, if you look at Shelley's District L, there's not service in Arvada for, what she says is about 70,000 people that are in the district. And if you go to the other end of the district in District N, they don't have anything at all. So, we talked about, well, do you try to give everybody a little bit of service, or do you try to, do you concentrate on where the need and the demand is highest? And I'll just say at the start, we didn't solve any problems because these are way too big problems to solve at lunch. We'd have to go to dinner. And then we also talked about the CAC and the issues with that we've had as an ongoing issue, which will not get solved, I don't believe, with how are we supposed to advise if we have to wait for the board to make a decision before things can happen. And of course, that is a more complex issue than it sounds like on the surface. So we didn't solve that one either. But, she does appreciate the efforts of the CAC. And we talked a little bit about the time it takes for RTD to do things, how, you start a study and it takes 18 months and there's, I will just say what was talked about with Director Broom, which is we can't wait for 18 months or 2 years for a decision about what we think we ought to do and then spend another 2 or 3 years implementing that. So RTD, at least I kind of was stressing that I think things need to speed up. And I'm not going to speak for Shelley about where she stands on that, but those were kind of the three topics we had.
Heather, do you want to have anything to say, or?
No, I just met with Troy and don't have anything more to add.
Okay. All right. Well, Vince, we appreciate all of you. You're welcome to stay. I do want to ask everyone to turn their cameras on because I want to take a screenshot of my last meeting with the CAC. So before Vince leaves.
Well, Roger, should report on our meeting with Vince, and it's fine to do it while he's here. He can correct us. And then actually I met a couple of days ago with Lynn informally, but I can kind of report on that as well. So we should do the last couple of pieces, but go ahead and take your picture.
I'm going to take my picture. Everyone smile to camera. Let's see if I know how to do this. Okay, there we go. All right, thank you. Oh, now here we go. Do it with John now on. All right, here we go. One, two, three. All right, thank you. All right, Matt, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Joanna, who's back. Joanna, the meeting with Vince at least, why don't you get started?
I don't have my notes from that. So I'm going to put it back to you. We had a good meeting. I think we've kind of covered all the pieces at this point, but.
Yeah, I mean, we talked with Vince, and Vince, you definitely can correct me because I'll go astray here. We talked about a lot of the things other people have mentioned. We talked about the free fares in August and whether that's really the best way to spend a whole bunch of state money. And if it's not, what could we maybe do about that next time, if there is a next time? We did talk about the CAC and about, you know, what is our role. I told Vince, as I'm sure many of you have mentioned, that I think the CAC has a great group of people, a lot of transit experience. Hopefully the new people will also have it, you know, so use us. But how do we really make that work? The ball's in our court a little bit on that. It's not all up to the board. It's partly up to us to work better and provide recommendations. But we did talk about, and I think Joe mentioned this, the kind of chicken and egg problem of where staff won't come talk to us about something until they talk to the board because, oh my God, then we'd know something the board doesn't know. Well, that means that by the time, and I get it, I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of it, it is a problem. And then by the time we get it, it's kind of too late, both because we only meet once a month and because, you know, the board's already heard it, has asked questions, kind of made up their mind, et cetera. We didn't solve it, but it's a problem I think we jointly do need to work on with the board. So that was part of the conversation. You know, Reimagine was part of the conversation. How does RTD get from here to there, and what the heck is there anyway, given all the changes in the world with COVID and working from home and everything else, and how do we make that work better? And again, how do, you know, we've heard Reimagine reports several times, but how do we make that work better? And then a little bit back on the role of CAC, you know, yeah, staff kind of runs things. I was on a city council for a long time. Staff mostly runs things everywhere, but what's the right balance there? And how do we make that work better? And how do we get them to work with CAC in a way where our ideas and recommendations are kind of making a difference? I think they do sometimes. I think it just depends on which staff it is and, you know, where they are in the process. Vince is sitting here, but so I'm going to say this anyway, and it's not because he's sitting here. I was really impressed. I had never met Vince before. I know several of the people on the board from being on the city council in Boulder. but I hadn't met Vince, and definitely impressed with how much he knows about and cares about transit. Delighted that he's creating some of these ad hoc committees to look in a little more depth at some of the issues that need to be looked at. But there's still a lot of big questions about the CAC role and how does RTD get from here to there, as it were. So that's what I remember, and it was a delightful lunch. And Joanna, I don't know if that triggered any memories for you, or Vince, feel free to jump in.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, we had a great conversation. And I think with regard to CAC, that, the issue always is, how do we use this talent pool more effectively? And that's something that we really need to focus on as a board to help give you ideas and hear back from you as well with your ideas. So I'm going to make sure that we keep this conversation going so that you guys are just looking at all these people and these names that I know from all over the place, and you guys are pretty sharp. So we need to take advantage of this. So that's my.
They are sharp. When are you appointing the next group? What do you know?
I don't know.
It's on it'll be on this board meeting coming up.
Yeah,
goes to executive committee next week.
Yeah.
And then at the board meeting on the 28th.
Right.
Okay. Well, all I can say is the last group or two have been fabulous people who know a lot about transit, or sometimes about city planning, land use, all the kind of related topics, transportation, mobility in general, even if it's not transit per se. Hopefully you'll find people like that again, because it sure makes our group really knowledgeable and able to ask terrific questions when we have presentations from staff. So, yeah.
I did put up in your Dropbox the board report with the short bios of the people that are up for appointment. I think you're going to be very impressed. Really some amazing people to join you. So
good.
I think Matt had something he wanted to
he did.
So we met with Eric Davidson downtown. I'd never met him before, and I was pleasantly surprised by how sharp he is. And I just wanted to share, I think he's particularly strong on the financial side.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about sort of refinancing some of RTD's loans, and just helping RTD as an agency become more fiscally responsible. And it dawned on me that it might help us with the legislature and the Pulse administration to connect someone like that, who's an accountant or has a finance background, understands RTD, and has really been working on it for the past couple of years. If we could set up a conversation between Eric and others, and like Faith Winter at the State Senate, or Steve Fenberg, and just communicate that like RTD is doing all these things to get in better shape financially, and sort of I guess challenge the reputation that RTD has at the state capitol. Which as someone who worked on Senate Bill 180, it really came up quite a bit, even as the state legislature was forcing RTD to come up with the 20% matching funds. I think something we fought against, but this is definitely a reputation for RTD at the state capitol. I think we could set up some of those conversations with people like Eric to help challenge some of that.
Yeah, actually, and I think we did talk with Vince briefly. If we didn't, we should have, about that piece of the role that members of this board can play a little bit, which is indeed talking to state legislators whom we might know. I mean, I know Steve Fenberg pretty well. That's not surprisingly, given that I was on the council. I know Jared, up to a point. Jared, of course, dislikes RTD because he is unhappy about no Northwest Rail, even though Northwest Rail is beyond crazy, but okay, it's hard to change his mind. Whether we would ever get an audience with him, I don't know, but it sure would be worth a try. I wouldn't do it, without checking in with the board, the RTD board, for sure. But it is something we could do with the board's blessing, simply because we do have people on our group who do know state legislators and folks who, we could therefore talk to. Doesn't mean we, have to say RTD is fabulous. We can talk about problems, but at least we're there talking to them. And that's worth something. It's worth a lot. And I think they would see us as being less political than the RTD board, which also is worth something. Nothing against the RTD board, but you know how that goes. And, we're not an elected group, and so we come across a little bit differently. So anyway, that's something for us to think about, and Vince, for you to think about with the board as well at some point. I can give one more quick report. I met with Lynn Geisinger, and I chat with Lynn once in a long while. I probably haven't seen her in a year and a half. She's the director for my district, and I know Lynn pretty well. And it was an informal meeting, so she doesn't know I'm reporting on it. So I'll have to be careful here. But she did say some of the things you've heard already. One about staff running things much too much, controlling things too much. Yes, there's a fine line between micromanaging and policy. And where you draw that line is never clear. It was never clear on city councils either. But she certainly felt that it was drawn in a way where basically the staff was running things way too much and the board was not. She's very supportive of CAC for sure. So as we try to figure out more about our role, we definitely have a supporter in Lynn in terms of how can we do a better job helping to work with the RTD board and the staff and so on. And she's, definitely concerned about RTD finances and frankly not getting enough data, she thinks, and I think too, but she certainly thinks, enough understanding at the board as to really how those finances work and, really setting the priorities with limited money. And the last thing, which just slipped out of my mind, of course, it'll come back to me eventually. I remember. She's really worried, especially with Polis in there, about whether the state legislature and the governor will try to reimagine how the RTD board is created. Obviously, it's elected right now. Most boards are appointed. The RTD board was appointed way back at the very beginning. That didn't work so well for a lot of reasons. It went to an elected model. But apparently there are 4 districts now where nobody is officially running, which would certainly give the legislature even more concern. And at least my understanding of it is you could have 2 outcomes here. Either the person will get appointed, or theoretically somebody could run as a write-in candidate and get 12 votes and be elected. And if that happens, you can be sure the legislature is going to show up and say, wait a minute, now you're getting people on the RTD board who have 12 write-in votes. What type of crazy system is this? And I don't know how that's going to turn out, but Lynn was understandably very worried about that. So that's, kind of my report from that meeting.
Well, didn't Reimagine suggest changing the way the board is constituted? I thought there was something in Reimagine on that.
No, there hasn't been, but there is some discussion about the size of the district that's going to come up and Reimagine, the geographic size of the district. But no, they're not going to mess with the elected board structure.
I did talk to Lynn about the size of the district. She's definitely concerned about that.
I know the accountability committee had touched on
correct.
The issue of appointed versus elected members, but decided not to go any further. They didn't make a decision.
Well, it's a tough problem.
I'm sure.
And the other thing I talked about with Lynn, for what it's worth, and we've talked about it here, which is why I brought it up, because it was a CAC issue, is it is kind of a reimagine issue, frankly, Ben, which is, well, so in the future, does RTD really become more of the regional supplier of transit, you know, the inter-community supplier, and, you know, maybe some of the routes that just have really high ridership, the bus rapid transit, et cetera, and the localities then provide transit internally and the first and final mile issues. And Lynn is absolutely interested in that. Of course, there's this extremely difficult problem of, so what happens with the tax dollars, and does that get rejiggered and so on. But I think she's a person who would be very interested in looking into that, which is good. Again, no solutions. I don't tend to have a solution, but it's good that she is on board with thinking about it. And she is decided to run again. She'll certainly get reelected. So Lynn will be on the board another 4 years. Okay.
All right.
Ryan, you got your hand up? No?
I don't think so.
Okay, sorry, I'm looking at my screen.
I'm sorry, I was out of the meeting for a little while earlier. One of the things I wanted to comment on is I'm actually on another citizen advisory committee, and we advise the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. And we have present at our meetings, we only meet 6 times a year, but present at our meetings is the sheriff himself each time. And that brings me back to RTD, wondering if we couldn't take a simple step to get somebody from the board to come to each one of our meetings. It wouldn't be a huge task, because they're, you know, we meet once a month, and that wouldn't mean that somebody had to come more than once a year. So that was just a suggestion I wanted to make, especially since I'm outgoing and Vince is sitting here listening to us. But maybe that would be kind of a way for us to directly have a voice with people on the board, and still go about our business, whatever our presentations were and so forth, but have some kind of maybe an early part of the meeting where we could talk with that board member and talk about what's important and what concerns are and how we could put input in. It might be kind of a painless way to give advice back to the board or information. The other thing we do with the Sheriff's Department is they're very good at making presentations to us about all kinds of things. And they never end a meeting without saying, what do you think? What should we do about this? What should we do about that? They always ask for our input. So those are 2 ways to get our CAC perhaps more involved. Just suggestion is all, but.
Mm-hmm. And Matt, if I may, I see that, Matt Applebaum, Mr. Chair, I see Matt Frommer has sent me a message, and if you don't mind, Matt Frommer, I'll just read it. So he wonders if the RTD board has ever met with the CDOT transportation commissioners, and might be particularly important with regard to the greenhouse gas rules that they're in the process of adopting. So, you know,
you never been the CDOT director, commissioner.
Yeah. So some of you may know that I'm married to a CDOT commissioner who represents Adams, Boulder, and Broomfield counties. So I hear the greenhouse gas stuff constantly, and I get the fact that, you know, transportation is a key component to making that happen. And you know, at the Dr. Cog RTC committee meeting on Tuesday, we talked about that as well. Yeah, unfortunately, I think CDOT thinks when they talk about transit, they think in terms of Mustang and Pegasus as being the cure, but you know, the number of boardings that CDOT transit services gets versus RTD is just minuscule. So, but yeah, it's got to be something that we talk. You know, we've only met like once a year for a dinner with CDOT. That was the only interaction we've ever really had with CDOT. We've tried. We had a committee. We had a representative that from the board that was appointed to go to CDOT meetings, and CDOT just kind of didn't cooperate too much. They never sent somebody to RTD. So it's, I don't know what's up with that relationship, but definitely something that we should look at exploring. We're intertwined in more ways than just transit. So anyway, thanks for that question. But yeah.
Yeah, it came up for me recently because, you know, as CDOT is approving more funding for bus staying, they want to increase the number of round trips on I-70 from 3 per day to 15.
Right.
When ridership is still at like 60, 70% of what it was in 2019. So they're really ambitious in the bus staying build out, but they're also not acknowledging the fact that like RTD service has to get people to Union if they need to get on bus staying, right? No one's going to park there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like the local transit, I mean, bus thing is going to depend on local transit to get ridership, and they're very ambitious. So it kind of all signs point back to RTD. So I'm wondering if that's a way into the conversation and maybe building a better relationship with CDOT.
Yeah, I think they know that. Just getting them to admit it, I guess, is the next step.
Oh, one last thing, Vince, it came up a little bit. I do hope that your board is seriously considering going back to meeting in person. I think our group would like to meet in person, and, you know, with 5 new members coming on, it is, as you know, it's really hard to join a group and never really see them. You know, not everybody can meet in person. We'll certainly continue the Zoom link, but the one meeting where we did 10 of us or so get together, boy, you just have better conversations. It's really that simple.
I agree, Matt. And, you know, we had a board retreat in, I think it was March, at the Performing Arts Center, rented a big space. We could all get together. And you're right, you know, I saw directors that were elected in last year, took office in 2021. And it was like the second time I've seen them in person. That was it. But yeah, you have much better conversations. So in that regard, what we're told is the RTD board conference room down in the dungeon at Blag is undergoing technology rehabilitation, and that won't be done until October. And then we have the issue of if we need to continue to have concerns about COVID, how do you distance the public in that tiny room? It's just the whole building is terrible. Anyway.
Well, you know, the public can come in. City councils have been doing this, where the public comes in via Zoom.
Yeah.
Council members at least meet together because it doesn't crowd the room.
Yeah.
7 members, 9 members. Yeah, you got 15. I won't make my kind of nasty comment about RTD and technology, since our technology is usually 30 years behind. So all I can say, if it's taking an October, I hope they'll only be 10 years behind instead of the usual 30.
Yeah, I just learned that some of our light rail monitor systems are still using Windows 2000. What can I say?
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's you guys need to work on too. I realize it all costs money, but you know, if you want a reliable system, you got to have good technology. So, anything else on meetings with board members, or any other thoughts for Vince? I know you probably need to leave. We thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all. And I did take copious notes from all the comments, and I do appreciate all the work that you guys do. It is important, and I will commit to working with you to figure out how we make it even better and moving forward. So, and Roger, I want to thank you, as always, at CRL, for all the work over the years you've done with this committee. It has just been yeoman's work and fantastic. And you will be definitely missed on this committee and elsewhere.
Thank you.
And with that said, if no one has any questions for me, I'll sign out.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Vince.
Thanks, you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
And I'm going to join in with a big thank you and goodbye to Roger. I can't say I'm very happy about this, but we don't get to choose. The board, as far as I know, didn't get to choose either.
This is not on the agenda right now, Matt.
I don't care. Tough. And I've known Roger for many years in various ways. We kind of crossed paths, but always in a good way. And I just want to really thank him for everything he's done, kind of keeping the committee going and getting us good people and keeping us up to date on what's going on in RTD land. And, you know, he also brought with him all the knowledge and all the history. So when we had questions, he could, you know, tell us stuff that none of us really know, because Roger's been doing this for a long time. We will see what the new people bring. I mean, hopefully they'll be good. But Roger, I will definitely miss you.
Likewise.
I will say I was going through my notes and putting a few more files away and found the outline for this committee that was dated in July of 2005. So that I put together a long 17 years. But I've appreciated the opportunity.
Joe?
Yes, I want to second what Matt has said, and I also I was looking forward to this part of the meeting because I want to extend a personal thank you to Roger for you know, here's a guy who's consistently treated people, and especially me, with dignity and grace, and I just can't say enough about that RTD is going to miss him, but I'm going to miss him too. So thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing about Roger. I think it's important, and again, we'll see what the new people do. What I really appreciated was Roger's honesty, whether that was being annoyed with me or something the CAC did, or, you know, frankly, telling us the truth about something going on in RTD land. It's important. It's, you know, it's how you get work done. It's how you learn. And Roger was always willing to do that in a, you know, in a polite way, but willing to let us know when we were off track or needed a nudge in some way or whatever it may be. That's a big deal. And I think it's, you know, partly who he is, and also partly because he's been doing this a long time. He's really comfortable doing it. And that was incredibly important for us. So yeah, again, we will see where we go with the new folks, and hopefully they'll be good. We, you know, is it for a group that only meets once a month, and obviously we're not down there personally, we depend enormously on our consultant to ensure that we get up-to-date information and good people who come and talk to us. It's not something the co-chairs, whoever they are, can really do. And so it's really extremely important to us to have somebody good. All right, anybody else want to say anything? We can embarrass Roger. He doesn't get embarrassed.
Well, thank you for that, Matt.
I second everything that's been said.
I'll miss working
with you. We're going to miss you.
And you're going to love the new people. I think really strong folks joining you on the committee. And I have every expectation that I'll still be seeing you and involved in RTD somehow. So, all right, I think the next item on the agenda, Matt, is Zero Fare August. I'm not calling it free fare because somebody's paying for it. And I think Brandon was going to give us a little quick update, and then Matt was going to also help us have a little, because Matt has been really working through his day job project a lot.
Okay,
yeah. So we are in the marketing process right now. We had a meeting yesterday with the UTA, Utah Transit Authority, to talk about their experience with free fares and kind of the lessons learned from their perspective, they are a much smaller transit agency, so we can't necessarily compare apples to oranges because we were so much larger, but they did have some really good insights. And we're going to be putting together some materials over the next week, and we'll start presenting to our TMO and TMA partners, I believe June 29th. So that's my quick update.
So I got a question, Brandon. I mean, RTD, sorry to pick on RTD's lack of technology, but RTD does not do a great job in the best of times kind of keeping track of who's writing the system, numbers. I assume part of the deal here is we really would like to get a good sense of how many people are writing it in August, although I'm not sure what to compare it to. With COVID, comparing it to last August is kind of pointless. Maybe comparing it to July or June. August is a tough month. A lot of people are on vacation in August. That's kind of prime time. So it's a little bit unfair anyway. How does RTD have a plan to kind of sort that out and have a report?
Yeah, I know that the Colorado Energy Office, which is providing the grants, is requiring us to have some sort of data analytics. I don't know to what extent it's going to entail. And I know UTA had a similar issue. They were doing their free fares in February, but they didn't really have a baseline because of COVID. So yeah, that's a great question. I can follow up with you when I get more information.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a great solution other than, yes, let's at least do a good job of counting. But what to compare it to, frankly, is not entirely obvious right now because the world is so weird at the moment. It's just hard to know whether you're a success or not. Yeah. Matt, do you have?
Yeah, so getting a little feedback again. Matt Applebaum, would you mind muting again?
Excuse me?
Would you mind just muting again? I'm getting feedback.
Oh, Roger's got to do that.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, so I was just going to share. So in my day job, I work for a nonprofit called Sweep, and I work on transportation policy. And we did kind of work this bill a bit through the legislature. It wasn't my top preference for a transit funding bill this session, but I think we kind of just took what the governor put in his budget request. And, now it's happening, right? RTD's got the funding from the Energy Office, and pretty much statewide, we're going to have free transit for the month of August, with the exception of bus staying, but it'll be RTD and then, local transit agencies from around the state. When I think about like the transit system more broadly, I feel like there's kind of a perfect storm right now that could really help bring back transit ridership. One is that we've got businesses asking people to come back to the office officially this summer. So they're going to have to figure out their commuting, and they're going to be approaching it again anew for the first time, potentially with an opportunity to build new habits. Gas prices are record levels right now in Colorado, approaching $5 a gallon, which feel like historically that's about when people start to think about their alternatives. And it's over $100 to fill up a tank. You start to think about what else is out there. And if transit's completely free in the month of August, I think there's a big opportunity there. And so, yeah, I'm hoping like this is kind of the summer or the month that we really bring back transit ridership. And we're just trying to kind of make lemonade out of lemons with this. I think this whole thing's, making transit free on its own isn't going to solve RTD and fix everything. I think it's just kind of a big opportunity to hype transit service, encourage people to try it for the first time, and support RTD as much as possible in delivering reliable service. I had meetings with a couple of board members. I think there's definitely some apprehension that was mentioned in this meeting from board members. I think there's some nerves around whether they'll be able to deliver on schedule, and they certainly don't want to embarrass themselves. So one piece of feedback we got from board member Angie Malpietti, that like the number one thing local governments could do would be to help RTD to recruit operators and mechanics and just kind of staff up, since they're really struggling to hire new people. Even with a $4,000 signing bonus right now, they're struggling to bring people on. And then on top of that, they've got COVID, which is taking people out of work momentarily. So yeah, that's kind of just how we're thinking about fare free or zero fare transit during August. We've had some really productive meetings with like the Metro Mayors Caucus in particular. So that's Catherine Marinelli runs the Metro Mayors. And I think Jackie Millay from Lone Tree is the chair. We had a big meeting with like 25 mayors from around the region, and basically all of them were excited about the Fare Free Month and asking RTD what they can do to help support. So looking for ways for local governments to really promote Fare Free Month and pledge to ride RTD and do some social media and that kind of thing. And then we're also reaching out and working with the TMAs and the chambers. I mean, in my mind, like maybe the biggest thing we could do is get the largest 100 companies in the Denver metro area to tell each of their employees that transit's going to be free for the month of August and really encourage them to use it. So I think working with the chambers is critical. There's also some efforts to reach out to some of the sports teams, music venues, and really just like any summer festival to help promote the free month. So some of the things we're looking at, I feel like we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on the marketing, just because the bill, is just signed into law. We've got to wait for the Energy Office to allocate the grant to RTD, and it looks like RTD won't have their media toolkit and promo materials till the end of the month, which gives us like just about a month, the month of July, to get the word out. So we're just trying to prepare in advance and make sure we're ready, and that basically everyone in the region knows that transit is free for the month of August. So yeah, I wanted to bring it to the group and just kind of ask for your thoughts on how the CAC could be supportive for the month of August.
I'll just jump in. I was on that meeting with the mayors as well. And I mean, I think the biggest thing that my takeaway is I've been a skeptic of this. And I think I've shared with you that I worry also about RTD's ability, just given their driver shortage and all, that too much promotion. We're risking Nate Miner or any other reporter who they're going to focus on some brand new rider that is unsatisfied with their experience. And I really worry about that. I think the other thing that was really interesting is everyone had lots of things. RTD ought to do this. RTD ought to do that to promote this project. And I think that's a problem that we have with, in general, that cities are always saying RTD ought to, and we don't see enough where the cities are stepping up and helping in a good way. So I'm hoping that came out of that some mayors went back and they got to thinking creatively, but are going to try to do some stuff on their own to support RTD and rather than just looking at RTD to be able to execute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just to your point, Roger, about sort of the risk with this whole thing, I think that's certainly a possibility, and there will be stories of people left stranded at the bus stop. But then that's why I also think it's up to us to highlight the human stories of where it's working, and people have tried the light rail for the first time and realize that it works for them. Or you have, a lower income household that is now saving a few $100 a month, taking the bus because it's free, and they're able to spend that money on groceries and healthcare and all these other things, while gas prices are through the roof. So that's why I kind of think we need to be proactive, at least in the coalition we're a part of at SWEEP and Conservation Colorado and Coburg, to try to kind of get ahead of it and maybe control the narrative a bit. And thankfully, I think we have some very sympathetic reporters in our city Like Nate Miner loves transit. He did a whole podcast on it. Same with John Murray, you know, and Michael Booth and Chase Woodruff. I think they're like rooting for RTD. So if we just give them the stories to help build that narrative, you know, they can build the case.
And along those lines, I really want to encourage everybody to really advocate for setting expectations with people. So really telling them about the Transit Watch app if you're hearing noise or chatter about it not being safe. And if people are complaining about drop trips, refer them to the website where they can look at service alerts and service disruptions. We know that these issues are going to happen. So if we can really be proactive, as you were saying, Matt, and give people the tools necessary to make their route a little bit more comfortable and timely, I think it's going to be really helpful, because I am worried about overloading the system. But if we can share these tools so people can check and make sure, oh, the route is canceled for this one, I need to leave 15 minutes later than I would normally or whatnot.
Anyone else have any thoughts or questions? Or I mean, I think we all share that we hope it's very successful. We know that transit's a key component to solving our pollution and greenhouse gas problems in the city. So, you know, fingers crossed.
Hey, Roger, John Fusa.
Yep.
So I'll bite. I'm new to this group. I don't know you well, but I've been impressed, and I do want to thank you and wish you good luck. Hopefully our paths cross in the future. I did, you know, we monitor, as part of my day job, I monitor RTD board meetings and agendas. And last night, their planning and service committee, I think, had a meeting, and one of the topics was this new concept of the sub-regional service group committees. Not quite sure if it's modeled on the Dr. Cog sub-regional working groups, but speaking as a resident way out here in District G, southeast edge of the district, in the Parker area, I'm hopeful that that concept will at least enable better communication and dialogue for the outlying communities in the district, and maybe lead to enhanced partnership and more innovative service approaches that meet the outlying needs of the district. You know, here in Parker, it's hard to run transit that makes a lot of sense because of our low densities and sometimes outright hostility to transit. But I'm hoping that's a model that may bear fruit in the future, just speaking from this corner of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. Well, then this is our opportunity to recognize our outgoing members of the committee. Very nice to have 3 of them here. And I put a message that Del Phillips sent me a little while ago about him not being able to be here. But Joe Lammers, Ryan McCaw, and Joanna are all terming out term limits. And I think all of you have been pretty much 8 years, I guess. I think you all came on full terms, or 6 years, 6 years. So I want to thank you. You've all, you know, sometimes we have members that leave that aren't very active. These are all 3 members that have been very active, both Joanna and Joe serving as co-chairs, Ryan always bringing some interesting information, interesting insight from his former day job, you know, around TOD and housing and how transit and housing intersect. So from me, I wanted to personally thank you all for your service to RTD, and open it up to you if you all have anything you want to say. Or anyone else, this is your chance.
Yeah, I would just say, like, I really appreciate the opportunity. You guys, Matt's totally right. Everybody's extremely smart on this board, and it's always been that way. So many kudos to Roger. I'm still in touch with some people. that I joined that were coming off the board shortly after I joined, like Jeff Kraft and some others out there. I appreciate those connections. Just like everybody has great backgrounds, but also just very interesting perspectives that always helped me kind of view my decision making and philosophies in a different manner. So I appreciate that. I also really appreciate Joanna doing such an awesome job as co-chair, and Joe as well. You guys rocked it. So and they're both Jefferson County people, which is cool, right? I used to work all the time. So no coincidence there, I'd say, but appreciate it. You guys can all find me on LinkedIn or at your local brewery, one of those places. I'm always around.
Well, I guess I'd make a couple of comments too. It's been a pleasure to serve for the last 6 years. It's been interesting. It's been challenging. We still have faced the challenge, I think, to be as effective as possible. I totally agree with Ryan. This committee consists of some really sharp, experienced individuals. We have a lot to offer. And I seriously mean that we should find ways to talk to the board more often and make sure they hear what our concerns are, and make sure anytime anybody presents to us, we take the opportunity to tell them what our thoughts are, give them some feedback, because we have useful feedback. And thank you, Roger, for all you've done for us, which we've already said. But and I think what's up next shortly is we need a new co-chair to replace me. So yeah. I hope some people want that job. It is not that difficult. It's mostly when you're at the meeting, and then we also have a pre-meeting call every month to make sure we have the agenda in order and everything. And it's kind of fun. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
I just have a couple comments. One is, I couldn't agree more with Ryan and Joanna, and thank you all very much for the opportunity to have worked with you. I think this has been a great opportunity, and I hope we continue to be involved with RTD in the future. Thanks.
So let me offer my thanks as well. When I first got on the board a couple of years ago or so, and didn't really know people or anything, Joe was, I think, the chair at that point, and he just couldn't have been nicer to me and to other new people who kind of stumbled in not knowing what we were doing or where we were going. And he was just wonderful. I mean, it was lovely getting to know him and how thoughtful he is, and really how helpful he is to the whole board, and how kind he was to all of us. And Joanna, it's been a pleasure being your co-chair for the past year. You've been great, incredibly knowledgeable about everything, and just lovely to work with. So definitely miss everybody who is leaving. They're all, again, on a board of really knowledgeable transit people. These are really, really knowledgeable people who know their stuff. They're going to be tough to replace. Hopefully we'll get some good folks. And indeed, as Joanna said, one of you currently serving should think about being a co-chair. I get to do it for one more year, but I'm happy to play second fiddle for the next year and have the new person kind of step up and really run some meetings and work with the group. So hopefully one of you will be interested, or several of you will be interested in doing that. Month, I guess.
Yeah, as Matt and Joanna have both said, the job is, it really is important to keep the committee process moving along. It's a 2-year commitment. We try to have co-chairs that run 2 years, and so that we are always having 1 year where someone has served a full term and then the new person coming on. I don't know how things may change, but we have typically had that call that Joanna mentioned once a month. We have the meeting, and then the co-chairs typically swap reporting to the board when the board is asked for a report from the committee. And so I would anticipate, it seems like the board has really liked having those additional reports, and I anticipate that that will continue as well. And the reason we go ahead and try to do the decision on this is you're going to have 5 new people that aren't going to have any ability to make and contribute to the selection of the co-chair. So I think it's helpful to have people that are even departing. They kind of understand and know everyone on the group, and we don't typically have a serious campaigning going on for the position. It's usually who volunteers, but we can certainly have an election if we need to. So I think that's kind of, we're rolling into this item on the agenda. There's some people that would be interested in volunteering to be a co-chair. I'm seeing all those raised hands coming up so quickly.
Yeah, don't be shy.
All right, so there's someone that's dying to do it. Is there anyone that's willing to do it?
Hey, Roger, it's John. So I'll throw my hat in the ring if there's nobody else. If there's anybody else, I yield.
All right. Well, anyone else? Because we'll take it, John.
I would second John for the job.
Okay, that's great. So, everyone, do I hear, is that by acclamation? Everyone's good with that?
Yes.
All right, I see thumbs up and waves. So, congratulations, John.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but right, you have to. We'll see.
Well, as the new co-chair, you get to do all the work.
I figured.
At least that's my theory.
It's not a bad theory.
So we'll. I know Joanna or Matt and now John, the Catalyst folks. I had a conversation with Jennifer Webster a couple of days ago. They'll be reaching out to you most likely next week. They have, I think, as I mentioned, they have all the background documents already. And you'll also receive a new calendar notice with a new Zoom link. So be watching for that coming from them probably next week as well.
Okay, well, Roger, maybe I'll get to say goodbye to you sometime in person if I'm down there or run into you. That would be nice.
I'm going to be up having beers with Ryan. So come join us.
Send me an invitation. You never know.
All right. Anything else? Anyone else have announcements or comments or anything for the good of the order?
Yeah, this is Heather. This is probably not nice to ask, but I'm kind of confused. Who will be your replacement, and is someone going to notify us?
Yeah, so the procurement was finished, and a new company, Catalyst Public Affairs, was selected. Okay. They also have a DBE, SBE partner. I'm not sure. I don't know how they're going to divide up the responsibilities, but yes, you'll be hearing from them. We have had communication and worked on the transition. I think we all agreed it would be confusing if you were starting to receive emails from them and a new link and things while you were still, our link. So we wanted to kind of finish this meeting, and then they will be in touch and make sure that you have all the materials and connections for the meeting in July.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, then. Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I'll be watching as an interested citizen from here on out.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.
Yeah, everybody. Great meeting. See you next month.
Thank you.